All right, so I'm going to have another one of these discussion type videos talking about the gaming industry in general, and specifically for this one, games that went woke and went broke, or more specifically, games that got went broke and turns out they were woke. So a lot of games in the past couple of years have, uh, you know, basically bombed big time, and later on we found out is because they were injecting all these identity politics into the game and not focusing on actual gameplay. Games like Redfall and Forspoken and Suicide Squad, they all have these, these politically charged messages that they're trying to inject in the game, and they're focusing on their politics more than they're focusing on actual gameplay and actual quality of the game. And inevitably, that ends up making a poor quality game that nobody wants to play because it sucks. So I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And how many of these games have failed in the last 2 years, 2023, 2024? More than I can count, more than I can even remember. I had to look up Redfall and Forspoken. Like, what are some of the games that actually failed? Because, there's been so very many of them, and they're so inconsequential after the fact. And yet these are games that millions of dollars were spent making, and huge sums of money were pumped into, and resources and people's time, and all just to end up having these low quality, low interest, and uninteresting and unenjoyable games that have all this identity politics, all this dialogue, all this, it looks like an interactive movie without any actual interactivity, any actual gameplay. And there was a lot of them. I mean, Redfall was not like that. Redfall was legitimately a fairly decent attempt at a game, let's say, but the quality was just not there. And obviously, Forspoken was the whole, politically charged message and everything. Same with Suicide Squad. I mean, it was all, DEI over actually making fun games, and they all suffered for it. So I guess the thing that I really want to talk about with respect to that is where that all comes from, how these games actually failed. And I think it's a combination of two things. First of all, a lot of content creators out there are calling these things out, are discovering these things. I mean, we didn't have, DEI detected and Sweet Baby Ink detected like Brutus Rambo's curator page. We didn't have that a year ago, and we do now. And we have more content creators talking about these things and finding these things out, and discovering that there's all these third party consultants injecting their politics in this. And all these studios and all these publishers are, sacrificing the good game ideas that were on the drafting board originally for identity politics, for political talking points, and for political, good boy points. So I mean, you're seeing a lot of this being exposed through those videos and through all of that. However, I think that the number of gamers that actually are watching those videos and discovering those things through those content creators is very small compared to the gaming audience at large. So explaining how these games actually fail goes a lot deeper than that, in my opinion. And I think more of it has to do with the fact that gamers are more sophisticated than these studios and these publishers give them credit for. Because I think a lot of these big AAA companies are really have the impression that you really are the brain dead consumers of product that they think you are, and you're not. You're obviously way not. So I think that by and large, most of this is just that the gamers are seeing these games and looking at what they look like and how they play, and discerning it for themselves to say, well, the quality isn't there for this, I'm going to skip it. And you can see the quality in a lot of these games. You can see the lack of attention being paid to gameplay and interesting mechanics, and just having fun, being able to have fun in the game. And gamers pick up on that way more than I think these AAA companies realize. And I think that that's a vast majority of why these games fail. I think a portion of it is because there's people like me online talking about it with much bigger audiences than I have. But I think the vast majority, like I said, is that that ability to discern a good game from a bad game just by looking at the trailer and just by looking at some screenshots and saying, well, this doesn't quite look right. This doesn't quite look like a game that I would want to play. And, a lot of people are skipping based on that alone. And I think that's a great thing. I think that's an ideal way of approaching this. And I think that gamers are finally waking up to the fact that these games are of poor quality. And I think that they've always had the ability to tell. I think they've always had that ability, but they just, I don't know. I think they were just able to buy the game and try it out. And if they didn't like it, they stopped playing it. And that's a lot of those games out there that you'll see them spike in concurrent users and then drop off like a rock. And I think you're seeing less and less of that over time. And I've kind of started to notice that pattern, and it's getting, the curve is getting longer. The curve is getting different. I mean, you're not seeing that drop off quite as significantly on good games as you were even a year ago, if not two. And I think a combination of factors is responsible for that as well. I think the first thing is obviously, gamers are waking up to the fact that there's poor quality games out there because they've played an awful lot of them and gotten burned. And the other part of that is I think that gamers are not interested in taking a chance on some of these games because, let's face it, the economy is in terrible shape. People are having to stretch their dollar a lot further than they used to. And I think that is showing in gaming more than anything else, because let's face it, gaming is a luxury. That is the first luxury to go out the window when, you got to tighten your belt around the household. And so people stop buying as many games. And I don't think it's quite as bad as people might think. I think that they're not just not buying games at all. I think they're just buying different games. I think they're being more selective and buying non-Western games, for example. A lot of the games that are getting really popular right now are coming out of Korea and Japan. So like From Software's, Elden Ring and Korea's various successes over the past 6 months, like First Descendant, for example, that's the most recent one that I can think of, are getting huge numbers because people are focusing their attention and their money and their resources on those games because they're shown to be good. They're visibly better than the Western gaming developers can put on offer. So I think we're trading a lot of what was previously Western gaming sales for Eastern sales, and that's shifted the focus away from those Western companies. So, the AAA industry in the West is looking at a massive crash, and they think that the gaming industry is crashing, but it's not crashing everywhere. It's just crashing for the AAA studios in the Western world, the ones that are injecting the identity politics in their games. The other studios, the Korean studios, the Japanese studios, even some of the Eastern European studios are doing phenomenally well. And any studio that doesn't inject an identity politics in their games, that doesn't focus on that over quality of the game, seems to be doing fairly well. At least if they're reasonably popular, they're doing fairly well right now, as opposed to, Ubisoft, as opposed to Square Enix, as opposed to all these other game developers that are, trying to score those DEI points over making good games. And, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. I think that we're far from we're far from out of this storm, because they seem to be, every time they have a big failure, they seem to double down. And obviously the next one up is Ubisoft with Star Wars Outlaws. And I think a part of why they aren't actually selling it on the Steam store is so that people can't get the numbers on it. I think that is the exact wrong way of going about things. I think they should have just made a good game and kept it on Steam, because, they made Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed's been coming to Steam forever. And even the latest one is no exception to that. But now somehow, we can't put it on Steam. We have to put it on Ubisoft Plus. And I think a combination that the part of that is to try and sell people on the subscription service. But I think another part of it is to hide the numbers from people so that we don't know how poorly it actually performs, and they can kind of gaslight us into saying, well, Star Wars Outlaws, it did really good. How really good? That's the real question. Like, what? 1 million copies sold? 10 million copies sold? 500,000 copies sold? What What's the actual number? I would love to know. And I don't think we'll ever find out that number for Star Wars Outlaws, because I don't think it's going to be very high. I think it's going to be closer to 500,000 than it is to 10 million. And it's not going to make its money back. That's my prediction, at least. That's from the last video I did, but I don't think it's going to make its money back, and I think they're hiding the fact that it won't. And I think that this is more for the DEI points than it is for anything else. And also, obviously, to get the Star Wars license and continue to have the Star Wars license to produce more games down the road. But, you know, if this does so poorly, I don't know if they would want to continue with that relationship. I don't know. And I guess that's more up to Disney these days, and Disney isn't famous for making good decisions in anything they do these days. So maybe they'll continue that relationship and just keep failing upwards. Ubisoft fails upwards. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I stand on the whole situation. I think we're going to see more games bite the big one, and then turns out that they were, you know, shoveling DEI propaganda into their games instead of working on good gameplay. And, you know, it's just going to continue happening probably for another couple of years at least. And, you know, we're just going to have to focus on the games that are good. Focus on those AA studios. Focus on those indie studios. Focus on the offshore studios, the ones that are in, you know, Korea, in Japan, in Eastern Europe, anywhere that they're, you know, focused on making good quality games, because Western AAA ain't where it's at. They seem to be consistently failing and doubling down every time they do. So that's what I got for you guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Kind of a different video, but, you know, let me know if this is the kind of thing that's up your alley. I'm kind of trying to do a little mix between these and the newsy type articles, or newsy type videos that I've been doing the past few. So hopefully that works out for you. And, you know, if not, then give these a skip and just keep watching the newsy type ones, or do the reverse. And I will talk to you guys later.